Hello, everyone. I don't prefer getting political for, well, any YouTube channel, unless that's what the channel is dedicated to, is sharing political and economic truth. But upon watching this week's RNC, the Republican National Convention, I tried to stream it on every device possible. I put it on all three TVs. I played it there. I put it on the tablet, what was left of my phone, the Fire Stick. I tried to cast it. I wanted to put it everywhere possible so that we get as many views, if that counts, as possible. Because I want to say, yes, there were a few jabs that were made. Both sides have made jabs at each other. There were a few statements that were made because that's what political speeches do. They both tell the truth, and they're meant to unify people at the same time. Now, the role of a politician, particularly a president, is not to just willy-nilly sign laws and sign bills into action. It's to do what is right in their heart with sound conscience for the citizens of that nation. The hard-working people of the United States of America have needed a president to stand up for them. Those in need have needed a president to stand up for them. One thing I will add upon that is needed right now is a rise in income to compensate for the cost of living that we see rising. When you've been in a political position for 47 or so years and nothing has changed, I think it's time to throw in the towel. Meanwhile, this administration has done all they can to combat human trafficking and child sex trafficking monsters. 9 bills were signed by this president against human and child trafficking, particularly on women and children. 9. The previous administration, I witnessed multiple accounts of human and child trafficking and drug trafficking on a daily basis, whether it was in the news or whether it was online or whether it was in person, sadly. I watched young people be threatened if they spoke their point of view. Still happening today. It's called bullying. I watched a group of drug dealers surround this one individual, drag them into their vehicle. I'm not going to say where or when I saw this, but it was during the previous administration. They had a serious talk with this individual, left the guy's lights on, his car, vehicle doors open, surrounded him with cars, took off with him, brought him back, and he was in a daze and looked like he was about to cry. People were being infiltrated into the drug trafficking lifestyle because they could not afford any other means of living. People were infiltrating themselves and joining gangs because they had no other hope or way out or family. Not myself necessarily at all, but individuals I was witnessing. People joined lifestyles that were dangerous because there were just not enough hope. Was not enough hope. There weren't enough jobs available, and there was not enough force to combat the evil side. We did not have leadership with enough gut to combat the evil that was taking place. But under this administration, 9 bills were signed against child trafficking and sex trafficking. One, just January of this year, January 20th, was signed against child trafficking and violence. Multiple bills against domestic violence, taking care of those under domestic violence assault. Multiple bills protecting rights of freedom of speech. Meanwhile, during the previous administration, not only did I see that young boy and his life threatened, we were outside of a Walmart, about to go to a restaurant. And as we drove by, I witnessed a situation that I'll never forget. This mother and her children were sitting out there. This Mexican family, or Hispanic family, were out there with a sign saying, "Lost our job, need money for rent." People were going by handing them money into this box. As we drove back by, because we didn't trust the situation, we thought, well, that's sad, seeing these children and a mother in need like that. Moments later, a fancy vehicle, a brand new vehicle with tinted windows, drove by that mother and children. She walked up and handed them the box of money that they had made from that day. And in exchange, they gave one of her children back to her. They handed her one of her children that they were holding hostage. Those traffickers were holding her child hostage. Those monsters were holding her child hostage and took the money she had made throughout that day. She had to give to them. On a daily basis, people were being threatened by drug lords and dealers and terrorists, infiltrated terrorists into the United States. Under the previous administration, multiple, I'm talking hundreds, of cases of school shootings, threats of violence, bullying, and infiltration of terrorist organizations into the United States, including the Boston bombing, all happened in the previous administration. Meanwhile, this president has held up for the rights of the citizens, holding up for the rights of critical care workers, critical infrastructure workers, holding up for the rights, if holding up for the rights of the citizens and securing this nation and its citizens' jobs is a crime, I don't know what to think. Holding up for people's belief, the Constitution, the flag, and our national anthem. If that's wrong, I don't want to be right. Freedom of speech is critical, and I was witnessing it dwindle during the previous administration. Freedom of our rights, fundamental rights that are supposed to be inalienable, were dwindling during the previous administration. If taking out terrorist leaders that even according to the Pentagon and White House officials had multiple plans and targets listed ready to take down in the United States and Europe, taking them down as a crime, I don't want to be right. If holding up for critical care workers and critical infrastructure workers that make this nation what it is a crime, I don't want to be right. If holding up for the national anthem, freedom of belief and speech, the flag, and those that fought and died for our nation is wrong, I don't want to be right. There are those that put their fingers in their ears and ignore what's being stated and just move on, and they go blah, 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 blah. Instead of focusing on the past of what someone has stated, and when I say focusing on the past, I don't mean focusing on what happened in this nation. I mean focusing on statements of the administration. Instead of focusing on past statements, we need to be focusing on the actions that moved forward, not past statements. Living in the past won't bring people together in the future. We must learn from past mistakes. Learn from our history. Not stop teaching it, but learn from that history. And do the right thing by moving forward in unification. Unity and true love. Not hate and division. Under this administration, multiple bills for our truck drivers, our medical workers, our critical infrastructure workers, the blue-collar jobs, the farmers, steel and industry workers in the United States, and the rights for them have been held up for. They've been held up for. Multiple bills combating human trafficking and terrorist monsters have been signed under this administration. Meanwhile, there is a bill called H.R. 1111 signed by Democrats that they claim is the Department of Peace Building, basically turning the United States into the UN, the United Nations. Now, what it claims is they're bringing in the U.S. Department of Peace. There's a channel known as God Rules that also explained this a little bit more. H.R. 1111 turns over, and it gives America away to the United Nations. It completely destroys the Constitution. It seizes guns, takes control of schools and health care, and effectively disarms the United States. And that's what they want to do. It was kept in stoppage of the normal flow until a favorable president can be elected. They stop it until a favorable president can be elected. Basically until they get someone that they want. This was one of the individuals, a Democrat, that allowed it. Do you really want that? Under the guise of peace, a false sense of security. Look what's under this. It's right here. The Democrats put it back into place in 2019 and changed it to the Department of Peace Building Act of 2019. H.R. 1111. Why they'd call it 1111, I don't know. A false awakening, false peace maybe. But that is the kind of thing that they push. That's the kind of thing that the House and Oversight and Reform has to look at this. It has to be unanimously passed, but they said they have to wait until the president, a favorable president comes in before they can have this happen. But I don't want the United States rights moved over to the UN. But that's what they say. It's a conspiracy theory. But that's what you saw taking place during the previous administration. Anyone with open eyes to see and ears to hear, and a mouth to speak should be speaking about this. Anyone with the eyes and ears should be able to see and hear, should be able to see and hear what was really going on and what's really happening. Anyone that holds up for the rights of the people, the workers, the citizens, anyone that holds strongly against child and sex traffickers and they're basically slave owners. That's what they are. Child and sex traffickers are nothing more than modern day slave trade owners and workers. It's another form of slavery. And those people are being targeted by this administration, rightfully so. And anyone that holds against standing in the way of those people, I don't know what to say. Anyone would hold up for those monsters, I don't know what to say. Now, they signed H.R. 5740, 116th Congress, Save Our Girls from Sex Trafficking Acts of 2020. The President signed an executive order this year, January 31st, on combating human trafficking and online child exploitation in the United States. President Trump, January 9th, fighting to eradicate human trafficking. And June 16th, 2020, the President released a report of human traffickers. They created human trafficking laws and regulations against the sex trade of minors, slavery, and involuntary servitude. Love 146 for anti-trafficking legislation, which are basically they're forced into slave labor. Servitude, forced labor, sex trafficking by force. Any sex trafficking by force or fraud, forced labor, will be penalized. The Anti-Child Trafficking Bill and Anti-Human Smugglers and Human Trafficking Bill. Yeah, they twisted it around and said it was an anti-sex worker bill. No, it was an anti-child and human trafficking bill. It specifically says right there, against their will. Anyone being trafficked against their will, their exploiters will be held to the full extent. How could you not hold up for an administration that fights for the rights of the good people? This time, think for yourself. Hold up for what's right. And think independently. Not by what you are forced to feel. Think for yourself and do what you know is right. Much love. This is my message. Shouldn't be clearer. Signing out.